Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Congressman Sam Graves is getting another stint as chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Mark Schrimmer of Landline Magazine joined Scott Thompson to discuss what that means for key trucking issues. Of the many problems that truckers deal with, those involving brokers seem to be among the most infuriating, and that includes the lack of transparency. Now, a proposed rule could change everything. OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs Jay Grimes explains. From a trucking company that helped a trucker in need to a court that made a bad decision on tolls, S.J. Munoz, Tyson Fisher, and Ryan Witkowski tell us who in recent news has been good and who's been bad with some roses and raspberries. And finally, a California state lawmaker is taking aim at CARB's recent updates to its low-carbon fuel standard, something that could significantly increase the already high cost of fuel in that state. Scott will talk with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Sam Graves is returning as chair of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. OOIDA issues a new call to action and more news of the day right now with the help of Mark Schrimmer, senior editor of Landline Magazine. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, always happy to be here.
Let's start on Capitol Hill here. We've got, or I guess we had, rather, two people in the running for chair of the House T&I Committee moving forward. But now there is one, Representative Rick Crawford stepping aside, clearing the path for Congressman Sam Graves.
Yeah, and obviously a very familiar name here, Representative Sam Graves from Missouri. He has been the leader of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee the past 2 years and was the ranking member 4 years before that. Actually had to receive a waiver from Republican rules in order to allow him to continue on. But, all signs point to now with Crawford stepping back that we will have Sam Graves in charge again. And he is definitely a person very capable and a good person. I think that they've chosen, since we're expecting a highway bill in the next session to come out. And he obviously knows this stuff and can probably be a good leader to help put that together over the next 2 years.
Yeah, and he needed that waiver because, as you point out, he has been the chair of the T&I committee for, I forget how many years it's been now, but for a while.
Yeah, I think so. I think he was ranking member for 4 and then the leader for 2. So overall in charge for 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So we know what to expect there. But as you point out, moving forward here, we've got a number of issues. I'm not sure we know exactly what this means for the T&I committee, but it does bring some continuity there, and it brings some certainty, I guess, as to what to expect from the leadership.
Yeah. Like you said, we know what to expect from him. Some of the things from a trucking standpoint, one of the good things from the Congressman Graves is, he's been against any increases for minimum insurance liability limits. That's been one thing that he really kind of stood up passionately against a couple of years ago, or during the last attempt at a highway bill. The Democrats tried to get that in, and he was one of the people fighting back against it. I think there's also hope on avenues like with truck parking and areas like that. So, I think OOIDA knows what to expect with him, and I think we're optimistic going into this next session, what they can get done.
Let's turn to broker transparency here. Obviously a big issue in 2024. Will continue to be a big issue in 2025 and possibly beyond. We'll see if the situation gets fixed here in the coming months. But Colin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office told us earlier in the week that they were going to be turning up the heat on Congress to act. And step one of that process began on Thursday with a call to action.
Yeah. So basically right now, this broker transparency proposal that's out there has gotten about 1,000 comments from the public, which if anybody that pays attention to these rulemakings and these comment periods in trucking, 1,000 is really good.
It's a lot, yeah.
But for as broad and as important as this rulemaking process is, it's really only a drop in the bucket. With speed limiters, if you remember, back in 2023, that got about 15,000 comments. I think that's more of the type of total that we're looking for here. And we got, these comment period is open through January 21st of next year. So we still got plenty of time to increase those numbers. And that's what OOIDA is making the push here to do so. And really, I have to give credit to the association. They couldn't have made it any easier. You can go to the Fighting for Truckers website. They have an area right there where you can submit comments through there. You don't even have to go to the regulations.gov website, all of that. And if you go, I want to comment, and I think there's things that I need to get out, but I don't really know where to start or how to go about writing this. OOIDA has created a comment guide and lists maybe close to a dozen questions of things, things that you could possibly explore and include, including experiences. We hear all the time with these fraudulent brokers and fake brokers, but also real brokers that kind of put, for lack of a better term, BS claims on a thing after they've already got a clean bill of lading. And so, letting the agency know about those specific experiences and things that you've had and why it's important to your business and why it's important to highway safety. Those things are going to play a pivotal role in trying to get these things actually, into a final rule.
Yeah, and we should also mention that proposal. Pretty simple stuff here, right? Requiring brokers to keep their records in electronic format and provide those records to people when they request them. Basic things that are already kind of on the books here, but really enforcing them and making sure there's more transparency in the name of cutting down on all this craziness that's going on.
Yeah, it's trying to evade a lot of the loopholes. And one of the loopholes that's brought up all the time is that before the electronic part that's in this, that a lot of times brokers will say, oh, you can come look at the transactions, but you need to come to our office and we can, I guess get a fax machine. I don't know what they have. What
carrier pigeon.
But now, the idea would be if you request it within 48 hours, electronic, email, it's an amazing thing.
What? Yeah, exactly. Technology, right? Fightingfortruckers.com. As you said, they couldn't have made it easier to go ahead and do this. Give as many comments as possible and make sure that they understand what a problem this is and what they can do to solve it. Mark, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was Mark Schrimmer, everyone. Before we step out, a couple more headlines of note here. FMCSA has removed 4 electronic logging devices from its list of registered devices. Columbus ELD and 3 Master ELD models manufactured by National Transportation Partners were revoked because they failed to meet minimum requirements. If you've got one of those, you'll need to stop using it immediately and revert to paper logs or logging software to record hours of service data. You'll also need to replace a revoked ELD with a compliant one before February 9th. And also hear a massive recall related to Bendix EC80 Advanced Electronic Control Units has grown again. PACCAR recalling more than 220,000 Peterbilt and Kenworth vehicles model years 2021 through 2025 due to the problem. This is an expansion of the Bendix ECU recall that's already affected hundreds of thousands of Mack, Volvo, Navistar, and International trucks. That's Lane Line Now News for today. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Ralph E. Bogue of Huntingburg, Indiana. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 39 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 293 years without causing a single accident. Next, I'll talk broker transparency with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Of the many problems that truckers deal with on a daily basis, those involving brokers seem to be, based on truckers' reactions, among the most infuriating. And among those broker issues, one of the most irritating is the lack of transparency in broker transactions. Now, a proposed rule could change everything. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Rettig. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, how are you doing?
Doing well, Mark. Good to be with you.
Good to have you here. Before we get into the latest, I'm just wondering if we can go over the details of this proposal one more time briefly, just for those who have not been keeping up with the current news.
Right. So after more than 4 years after OOIDA filed a petition for rulemaking to improve broker transparency on a couple fronts, FMCSA last month put out a long-awaited notice of proposed rulemaking. So critical word there, proposed. So we have a proposal here, and it really outlines 4 key changes from current regulations that are on the books but hardly ever enforced, as we all too well know. But kind of going through these 4 key changes: 1, requiring brokers to keep their records in an electronic format, requiring brokers to provide an electronic copy of records within 48 hours of request. It modernizes the contents of what records need to be required, and records must contain all changes, charges, and payments connected to the shipment, including description, amount, and date. Would also be required to include any claims connected to the shipment. So more specifics about the information that brokers would be required to keep and provide. And then it also affirms that brokers have a regulatory obligation to provide transaction records. It proposes to amend the 371.3C regulations to really put the regulatory burden onto the brokers. Current regulations say that carriers have a right to review. The updated language is much stronger, saying that brokers must provide electronic records, must provide these records within 48 hours upon request. So I think it's a positive proposal. Overall, something to work off of, and we've got a comment period that's going to be open through end of January 21st of 2025. FMCSA seeking feedback on those 4 provisions, as well as a few other questions that they'd like to have some more information on.
Now, you mentioned OOIDA's call for comments, and the association has just put out a call to action. I want to address something. I've heard a lot of truckers say over the years, hey, that's what OOIDA is for. Why do I have to do that? You and your colleagues have always said that comments from individual truckers are vital to getting something like this done. Why are those comments from truckers in particular important?
Well, as part of the public rulemaking process, FMCSA has to go through every individual comment that is submitted to the docket. And it's really important that truckers provide their own insight and experiences to build up the record, build up interest in this particular proposal. One of the things that's going to be critical here, kind of given the timing, as we all know, we're kind of going through this administrative transition period right now. President Trump is going to be inaugurated on January 20th. This comment period is going to end the following day on January 21st. A lot of this work to improve broker transparency began back in the Trump administration in the spring of 2020, where drivers went to Washington urging broker transparency, got the president involved, got the president interested. He called that the brokers involved in some of these practices were price gouging drivers. So we want to make sure that his work picks up, right on day 2 of the administration here, and that this proposal continues through the rulemaking process and we get a finalized rule down the line. The more comments that are on the docket, I think, is going to bring up the numbers and really make an impression on the new leadership at DOT, FMCSA, and certainly the White House.
You mentioned that the agency has to, by law, go through every one of these comments. And there was actually a recent situation where there were a lot of those comments, and it really did make a difference, even though the situation is ongoing. And, of course, that was speed limiters. Can you talk a little bit about what happened in that instance?
Yeah, so a couple stories there, kind of going back to 2016, where there was a flood of opposition to speed limiter rulemaking. The Trump administration elected not to advance that proposal back in 2016. Then April 2022, FMCSA, somewhat out of the blue, reopens the speed limiter rulemaking process, puts out a supplemental advance notice of proposed rulemaking, seeking additional feedback and kind of opening that door to a speed limiter mandate. In response, the agency received over 15,000 public comments, a particularly high number when you look at all the proposals and different regulations that come out from the agencies. That certainly caught the agency's attention. I think it caught Congress's attention as well. We've seen a whole host of support for the DRIVE Act, which would prohibit FMCSA from advancing any speed limiter mandate. And since that April 2022 proposal, FMCSA has not taken any further regulatory action. In fact, they've a number of times have delayed projected proposed rulemakings that we thought they were going to come out with to kind of move the ball along on speed limiters. But I think given that opposition, given that number of comments exceeding 15,000, the agency has held back so far, kind of waiting and see what the new administration is going to do on speed limiters, if anything. But I think we can thank all those comments that came in 2022 to really make sure that that speed limiter proposal did not advance anywhere.
In addition to the call to action, OOIDA has put out a guide to commenting, kind of to help truckers make their voices heard and help them be as effective as they can. One of the things they do in there is they lift some questions, things that might help people think about what kind of information to provide to FMCSA that'll be the most useful in terms of explaining why people support the proposal. Can you walk us through some of those questions?
Yeah, for sure. And, FMCSA, in their notice of proposed rulemaking, it's about an 80-page document. There's some kind of hints that they, want to hear specifically back on. Certainly those 4 main provisions. They've also put out, I think, about 10 different questions that they're asking specifics on. About half of those are directed kind of towards brokers, but a few are going to be really critical for drivers and motor carriers to provide input on, including if you think the 48-hour time frame would create a substantial burden on the broker side. Do we think the proposal would reduce instances of illegal brokering? Would the bad brokers that are currently restricting broker transparency, if these rules are made final, would that drive some of these bad actors out of the trucking industry? A couple key ones: should carriers requesting records be required to submit their request in writing, or should they be required to do it electronic only? We certainly, I think, view the electronic requirement as a major positive, that could really make these requests much more efficient and hold brokers much more accountable, really eliminate the loophole that we've seen where brokers require carriers to come into their principal place of business only to review a hard copy, when we know brokers keep a lot of these records electronically nowadays anyway. So that's going to be a key. Obviously, another crucial component of this is hearing from motor carriers who have had troublesome and problematic experiences when it comes to broker transparency. So, we're asking OOIDA members to specifically provide feedback on if they think more broker transparency would help their operation. Is it fair that brokers can willingly evade regulation without fear of enforcement? Have you experienced brokers denying your rights to review transaction information? Have you been blacklisted by brokers for requesting transaction information? Do you think these proposals would help curb that those blacklisting processes? So a number of questions to kind of give drivers who want to submit comments some kind of starting points to go about. I also want to remind, you don't have to write 10 pages of comments in feedback for this. Any insight helps, whether that's a sentence, a paragraph, whatever you have to add is going to go a long way into advancing this broker transparency rulemaking.
Okay. And folks, of course, you can find the call to action and you can find that guide to commenting on this broker transparency proposal at the website fightingfortruckers.com. And within that guide, I would really suggest people pay attention to the section titled What You Can Do Now. And that really kind of spells it out for you. And remember that the deadline is January 21st. Jay, we've got a little bit of time left. There is another topic we wanted to try to get to. FMCSA has issued some regulatory guidance regarding something that may seem like a small issue, but one that nonetheless has created some problems for some truckers. What is the issue here?
Yeah, so the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has what they call a Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard, which is kind of the specification and requirements on the equipment side that vehicles have to comply with. And NHTSA, they have a jurisdiction over not only cars, buses, light-duty vehicles, but the heavy-duty truck equipment side as well. And they've got a Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard that requires manufacturers to certify that the rear impact guards on the back of trucks are compliant to Federal Motor Carrier and NHTSA standards. That sticker, that certification, that label is put on right at the manufacturing of the truck. Most times that sticker, that label ends up getting damaged, wearing off, getting removed as the truck gets on the road. But that Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard, drivers, carriers can still be found in violation if that rear guard is damaged or missing when they come under inspection. Now, law enforcement is aware of this issue, is mostly in agreement that this is not a safety issue in any way if this rear impact guard is missing. But kind of due to the nature of the law, they can sometimes, be forced to write violations, which we think is a misguided use of enforcement. CVSA has actually petitioned NHTSA over the years to remove this requirement. NHTSA has denied their petition, but FMCSA, I think, has been kind of working, understanding this common sense predicament that enforcement officials and carriers kind of have to deal with this labeling issue. And fortunately, just this week, they have issued guidance clarifying this question. Does an ineligible, incomplete, or missing rear impact guard certification label establish a violation of Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations? Simply, FMCSA's guidance says no. I also think there's a lot of support from the law enforcement side not to write up violations if they see a missing rear impact guard label. So some positive news on that compliance and enforcement front with a really pesky compliance issue that drivers have to deal with.
Okay. And folks, if you want more information about that, you can go to landline.media. They have a story up with details. Jay, thank you very much for the information.
All righty. Thank you.
And folks, of course, you can find that information on our website. And as we mentioned earlier, links to the call to action and comment guide for the broker transparency regulation. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. Please stay with us through a short commercial break. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibertechtvd.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Vendor choice. Owner-operators rejoice. Truckdown.com.
Landline Now, welcome back. Has your senator or congressman made you happy lately? Did the truck stop make you kind of sad? When they do either one, here at Landline, we have a special way of responding.
Ew.
We call it Roses and Razzberries. Staff writer S.J. Munoz keeps track of such things for Landline Magazine and for our program. S.J. is here now with the good, the bad, and the ugly from recent news.
And welcome back to another edition of Roses and Razzberries. The usual crew here, Ryan Witkowski, Tyson Fisher, I'm S.J. Munoz. As we like to do at the top every time, we just remind you, rose, raspberry, or maybe a combination of the two, go ahead and send those to roses@landlinemag.com. And I think I'm obligated to say this. Can you guys believe it's December already?
I can, actually. I didn't know what we were going to do. We did Halloween candy in October. Are we going to do, like, best stocking stuffers?
Hey, I mean, go for it.
Scratchers tickets got to be up there.
Scratcher tickets, yeah.
And I don't know why, but those big fat peppermint sticks, you know, the ones that are like the soft one, I like those too.
I've got nothing to add. those are the two essentials.
I mean, you can't really go wrong with the scratchers.
And a chocolate orange. Those are good,
I thought you maybe throw in like the little airplane bottles maybe that you can, for just your family get-togethers. But let's go ahead and get started, and we'll go with the roses here to get us going, Tyson.
Yeah, so roses to a trucking company owner who helped out a fellow trucker in a pretty big way. So what happened was, this starts off as a raspberry, actually. So recently, Kerry Jordan, he poured like all of his family's savings into buying a new truck in order to make money as an owner-operator. Well, what happened was, soon after, that truck was stolen. Like, he just bought this brand new truck, as we all know, it's like, $150,000. Someone just comes and steals his truck. And so this made the local news rounds. So this happened in Houston. It made a local news rounds, and it got some attention on social media. And so what happened was Peter Montes, he's the owner of PM Fleets. He saw this, and so he decided to give Jordan pretty much the biggest Christmas present of his life, which is a new truck.
So better than a stocking stuffer, you would say. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A little bit better than a scratcher ticket, But, yeah, so what happened was, this trucking company owner, he got a hold of this driver and told him basically he can just swing by and just choose out a truck for free. Like, as far as I understand, from what I understand, there's no catch to this. This guy just saw this unfortunate incident.
Wow.
It's like, I'm going to give this guy a truck because this sucks. And so, as a matter of fact, a local news source interviewed Montes, and his quote was, "Evil will not win." That was his whole thing. It's like, he saw this, like, I'm not going to let this happen to this guy. And really stepped up to the plate. So, by the way, again, like I said, this happened in Houston. So police are still looking for whoever stole his truck. So if you know anything about it, of course, reach out to law enforcement. But that's a $150,000 gift this guy just got.
That is incredible to do for a complete stranger, too.
Right? Yeah.
Well, we were kind of skeptical of it, and I'm sure when you came across the story, and I can imagine when he got that phone call saying, just come by and pick a truck you want. Like, he's probably like, bro, who's it's like, exactly. Yeah. Like that. Yeah. There's got to be some kind of, one of his buddies or something messing with him. But fortunately, it wasn't. We'll go ahead and get in the raspberries here, Ryan. You got I guess one word will kind of sum it up here. All we got to say is tolls, right?
I have been waiting for this for like a year and a half now, too, by the way, which makes me seem like a real nerd. But raspberries to the U.S. Court of Appeals for issuing a ruling in the Rhode Island tolls case. Recently, they issued the ruling, I believe it was Friday of last week, but September of 2023 is when oral arguments were heard in this case. They were appealing the constitutional right to be able to toll trucks only over the thruway to basically make up for not having funds to rebuild their bridges. So long story short, this was stricken down by a district court. They said it was unconstitutional, violated the Commerce Clause, and it was disproportionately beneficial to in-state truckers. It was stricken down. They had to stop collecting collecting those tolls, and they haven't been able to collect those tolls for nearly 2 years. Shortly after that, though, they filed an appeal. Appeals were heard about a year ago, and then this verdict finally came in. So again, I've been waiting patiently, clicking on that link every day to see if they'd issued a ruling. Finally, they did, and it came back that they can resume those tolls. The court decided that it was not unconstitutional for them to have that in place, but they couldn't have the daily caps. Those benefited in-state truckers too much, so they had to get rid of those. Now they're debating about whether or not they're going to bring it back, how it looks when they bring it back, and how that will affect in-state truckers. When you think about the folks who are getting taxed on this, though, it's truck drivers specifically who are footing the bill to pay for these 12 different bridges. Court documents showed 97% of the vehicles traveling on the thruway were not being tolled for those bridges. And of the vehicles that were being tolled at those 12 different gantries across the state, 19% of those vehicles were registered in state. So I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to go, boy, this is really disproportionately affecting truck drivers and more so disproportionately affecting out-of-state truckers. But I'm not on the U.S. Court of Appeals. I'm not a judge. I don't know if you guys knew that or not. But
now we do.
But I had nothing to do with this ruling. So raspberries to them for allowing Rhode Island to resume that program. And I am curious, too, what kind of precedent that sets for other states moving forward who want to make truckers foot the bill on any of their toll roads.
Yeah, it's a similar thing happening in New York City with congestion pricing. The state's own study found that commercial vehicles make up of 4% of traffic in that congestion zone, yet truckers have to pay twice what everyone else does. So again, disproportionate compared to what they're contributing to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah, when you put those numbers
Right.
on it, common sense will tell you that's kind of ludicrous. But then when you put the 90-some% is really wild. But we got more raspberries to get to here, Tyson, huh?
Yeah, this is a doozy. Raspberries to a trucker who took a common social media rage post and took it to the next level. So a truck driver was recently stabbed at the Love's truck stop in Troutdale, Oregon. So when police arrived, the victim said the suspect was upset about how long he was taking at the gas station. So a verbal argument ensued. And a stabbing happened. So, that's basically what happened. This guy took too long at the fuel island. Guy got mad, stabbed the dude. So, he's being charged with second-degree assault, attempted assault, unlawful use of a weapon, reckless endangerment. So, in the previous edition of Roses and Razzberries, I mentioned how a certain trucker Facebook groups or dumpster fires. They can be bad. There's at least one where at least once a day someone posts a picture of a driver on the fuel island with that person who's posting, complaining about how long they're at that fuel island. I see this every day, multiple times a day. It is a very common, if not the most common post on this truck grouper page. So to me, this stabbing isn't all that surprising because when I see this all the time on social media, it's going to be a matter of time.
Eventually, it's going to go to that next level.
Someone just flips. And that's what happens. So, but I used to think that, whining on the internet was just like, it's a little too much. Just, and people say it's mind your business, quit posting pictures of people, whatever. But if raging on social media prevents you from stabbing people, then rage away. I guess that's a good outlet to,
let a little bit of that steam out, huh?
This fuel island just hanging out the diesel lane.
This is why I've limited my my Facebook trucker groups to those who post about cooking in their semi.
Oh, see, that's
which
more
is a little god awful looking, by the way. It's the most terrible steaks I've seen on the planet. But hey, more power to you. Go.
That's healthy, not just physically, but mentally. That's a healthier option.
Yeah, let's go ahead and use the knife to cut the meat instead of and stab other people. How about we do that? This is you have another outlandish kind of story here, right?
Yeah,
Ryan?
He probably doesn't deserve them, but I'm going to go ahead and give some roses to this guy for being safe. Jose Rosa Rivera. Oh, hey, roses right there. He's a trucker from New Jersey. He recently led police on a 75-mile chase down I-80 in western Iowa. Troopers actually began looking for his vehicle after they got reports of a semi dragging a chain, creating sparks down the highway. The driver, when the police tried to stop him, completely refused to stop. The criminal complaint says that when the trooper pulled alongside the vehicle, Rosa Rivera made eye contact with the trooper before looking ahead at the road. Safe to say he knew he was probably getting pulled over. So the police said the driver had, quote, bloodshot, watery eyes, visible body tremors, an elevated pulse while laying in a hospital bed, constricted pupils, and sporadic abdominal convulsing and heavy breathing. Police also said the driver repeatedly stated, "Jesus Christ is coming," to law enforcement and medical personnel. Naturally, they tested him for drugs because that's what happens when you say and do those sorts of things. Right. Obviously, none of that should be celebrated, okay? Like, I want to get that out there right now. Disclaimer, don't try this at home, kids. Here's the kicker. Police said he was actually being pretty safe over the 75 miles.
Good for him.
This is from Sergeant Alex Dinkla of the Iowa State Patrol. Quote, "This driver actually was driving with a due regard for the safety of others. He was taking measures to be safe as he was driving, even though he was not stopping for law enforcement." I mean, I'm letting you know, I'm pretty sure this guy was high on something, and he wasn't stopping for police. He couldn't care less about that, but all of that training really started kicking in when he needed to be. He was safe, so I guess roses to that? I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, raspberries to everything else, but roses to CDL training really kicking in and carrying him through those 75 miles.
Well, we're going to get a little bit specific here with the next rose. This is another, not quite to that extent, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, tough follow. So roses to a lawmaker trying to encourage truck drivers to fight human trafficking. So Arkansas State Representative Steve Unger, he recently introduced a bill that will offer truck drivers a free lifetime hunting and fishing license for combating human trafficking. So House Bill 1059 will give that lifetime hunting and fishing license with an optional lifetime trout and duck stamp, by the way. That can be offered to any truck driver who lives in Arkansas and provides information to law enforcement that either rescues a victim of human trafficking or leads to the conviction of someone involved in human trafficking. So this is worth about $1,000 for a lifetime hunting license, by the way. So this is a $1,000 reward, and you get to hunt all the time. So the crime, by the way, does not have to take place in Arkansas. So if you're an interstate truck driver and you see something happen in Florida or whatever, this still applies. They're still good. Yeah, very interesting, narrow in scope.
I'm so puzzled by this.
Very narrow in scope, this legislation. But hey, whatever it takes to combat human trafficking, which, by the way, truck stops are a very popular place for human trafficking and prostitution and whatnot. And this guy knows this because he has spent time with the National Child Protection Task Force. So he understands that truck drivers are pretty much at the front lines when it comes to combating human trafficking. As a matter of fact, Truckers Against Trafficking formed in 2009. So, yeah, big deal. Very novel way of encouraging this. But, hey,
I certainly get it because of the Truckers for Trafficking aspect. We've had that conversation plenty of times, how they're in a unique position to be able to witness some of these things and see some of the early warning signs and maybe stop some of these crimes before they happen. This seems like the most narrow-focused piece of legislation I've ever heard of. And also, was there an issue with these folks not reporting this before? Like, they're going, oh, well, now that I know there's an optional trout and duck stamp for life on here, maybe I should report this crime?
Got to sweeten the pot, man.
I guess, man. I guess there's going to be people going around the country now trying to get an Arkansas hunting license.
Yeah, we definitely want to. I mean, it's a good cause to, but I guess it's, outside the box. Maybe he knows his constituents obviously better than we do. So we'll see where this ends up. We are at about a time, but we got to sneak this one in. This is another one of those that it seems it pops up very often, but it's, I wish we had that kind of luck,
I
right?
see these like once a month. Speaking of scratchers tickets, right? The perfect stocking stuffer. Roses to a trucker for his work ethic. David Smuts, a 71-year-old trucker from Iowa, is $500,000 richer after hitting it big on a scratcher ticket. He said he was on his way to a birthday party with his wife when he scratched the winning ticket. Has no plans to retire. 71 years old, has no plans to retire because, quote, still enjoys working. I don't know, you 71, you should already be retired, but more power to you. Great work ethic on that guy. I don't know, maybe work less, David, just a little bit less.
Hey, man, he might change his mind once that first, direct deposit hits.
He does say he plans to buy a new car and travel with his wife, so apparently that's still a sense of enjoyment for him being around her.
All right, again, just one reminder, if you do have a rose or raspberry, send those to roses@landlinemag.com. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Roses and Razzberries. For Tyson Fisher and Ryan Witkowski, I'm S.J. Munoz. Landline Now will be back after this commercial break.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truckstop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to the home stretch of Landline Now today, as we'll close things out with another trip around the country for the state legislative update. And for that, we turn to our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine. Keith, how you doing?
Scott, doing well. How's it going?
Doing all right here. We're going to start in California, a state that has no shortage of stories coming out of it with regard to trucking matters. They recently updated a regulation, CARB did, California Air Resources Board. Before we get into the latest efforts to repeal it, let's start with the rule itself. This is called the Low Carbon Fuel Standard, and the updates CARB wants in place there.
Yeah, we could definitely spend quite a bit of time, probably on a weekly basis, just talking about California issues, right? Could have your own little California segment. We'll lead off this segment, of course, talking about the Air Resources Board. I know, obviously, it's been a topic for decades now. This specifically going back to 2011, when they put in place the regulations with the idea of by the time they reach 2045, they want to reach these net zero greenhouse gases. So, going back again over more than a decade, put in place regulations intended to help them along that path, encouraging the use of cleaner fuels by providing what they would say were financial incentives to do so, to phase out gas and diesel. Now, the financial incentives essentially amount to a monetary punch to the gut if you if you have emissions that exceed the allowable amount. So if that is indeed the case, you have to pay to exceed those that threshold that they've got in place at that particular time. Obviously, as we get closer and closer to 2045, the percentage of emissions that you can be emitting dwindles and gets much, much smaller. So, yeah, I mean, that is something that since it was implemented, folks, again, oil producers, have had to pay quite a bit because they are exceeding those emission limits. And, I mean, it has resulted in some higher fuel costs, as you would expect. Yeah. Those companies that are having to pay the state for exceeding those limits, they're going to be recouping their costs. So, in essence, what you could say, it's turned into folks at the pump effectively paying the state for the fact that they're continuing to fuel with gas and diesel.
So as you can imagine, there has been some pushback in California. Anytime something like this comes up, we obviously hear about it and we see it. And no exception here. We've got efforts to repeal this standard here within the State House, I believe. What does that look like?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was doing the background. The most recent background on this goes to last month, when CARB voted to boost the threshold that they're looking to achieve by 2030. They're supposed to be at 20% by 2030. They increased that to 30% by 2030. So speeding up the process of looking to achieve their cutting of gas and diesel. So that there is an expectation that has been out there for quite some time. And you've even got a study that was published at the University of Pennsylvania that said if CARB was to take this action, what would happen when people are paying at the pump? I mean, there has been an estimate that it could be a 60-cent per gallon increase in diesel. About 50 cents on gas has been thrown out some time ago, and CARB themselves had said that this most likely was going to happen. Now they have since walked that back, and they said, well, you can't say that is indeed going to happen, but it's out there, and it is definitely a huge concern, and something that as the state legislature there in California gets ready to start the 2025 session, there has been, at this point, 2 bills. There's a California Assembly bill and a California Senate bill would do the same thing, essentially walking back what CARB approved last month with boosting from the 20% goal to 30% goal of reducing emissions there by 2030.
Considering the makeup of the legislature there in California, I would assume that the chances of this getting anywhere are probably pretty slim.
Well, I would say, who knows what would happen at the legislature? I mean, we've seen the legislature pass some stuff recently, and you'd say some good legislation that could benefit truck drivers or the industry itself, and then heading to Governor Newsom's desk and getting a veto. I mean, the legislature and the governor's office, I mean, they're all in the same party, so there is no guarantee that they're going to go along with one another. It's entirely possible that the legislature could pass the legislation that walks back what CARB has done. CARB, of course, they're unelected. They're appointed by the governor, Newsom in this case. So effectively, they're doing what he has asked them to do.
Yeah.
Unlikely that he is going to veto what they've done.
Right. Sure.
So anyway, yes. But will something happen, in the next few years once he's at 2026 is when he's out of office? Could something happen at that point? Sure. Are gas and fuel prices going to be significantly higher in California at that time?
Probably.
Odds are in favor of that being the case. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. Let's move on to New Jersey here, one of many states where tolling prices are going to go up on New Year's Day. There's some pushback there as well. But before that, how much of a hike are we talking about there in the Garden State?
Yeah, a 3% toll increase for users there, which, this isn't a unique thing. It's an annual thing there in New Jersey now with the Turnpike and the Parkway. This is going to be the 5th round of the 3% toll increases.
Yeah, there you go. And that is what's supposed to happen here in a few weeks. But again, that pushback there, what exactly is that looking like? What form is it taking? And what are they asking for, I guess?
Yeah, you've got three state lawmakers, all representing the Ocean County District, that wrote a letter to the governor asking him to take action to veto the Turnpike Authority's vote here recently to go ahead and implement this 5th round of 3% toll increases. Now, they did remind the governor, in case he potentially forgot just over a year ago, that he vetoed a toll increase that was expected for January 1st of 2024, something at the time that was just before Election Day. In New Jersey, they have odd numbered year elections. So was that at the time, the governor taking that action in the lead up to state house elections there in New Jersey? Well, whenever he acted about a month or so after the elections and said, okay, I'm okay with this toll increase, did kind of, raise some questions of how legit that was.
Right.
But anyway, again, a year later with another 3% toll increase coming up January 1st, 2025, you've got some lawmakers at the State House there that are saying, revisit this veto. And we will see if what governor, if any, governor there in New Jersey takes.
Yeah, prices going up everywhere. As we mentioned, quite a few states will raise tolls on January 1st. We've covered a few here before. We'll probably cover more in the coming weeks. Keith, we appreciate it as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You can check out Keith's work every day on Landline.media and in every issue of Landline Magazine. Our thanks to Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine, and our thanks to you for listening. That's our show for today. So until we meet again, take care and drive safe.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome,
and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.